You? Not like through a event, like a real.
No.
Were you in the Tower
9/11?
Twin? Yes.
Was I there? No.
Yes.
No,
but
but
I
you
was
were
alive.
alive.
Yes.
And
Close?
You remember?
You were close?
Of course,
Oh,
I remember that day.
Okay, make it a question.
no, but it did affect you in some way.
It affected me. It was
okay.
my first day of teaching in front of a class
Oh,
that I had to give myself, like my first actual day of work where I would be all by myself. And I woke up in the morning to that, and as I was getting ready, the towers were still falling, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and friends that were living in New York and their phones weren't
where
working.
were you?
And I was in Vancouver, so the other side of the continent, but at the same time, we didn't know what was happening. So as I had finally left to go, the Pentagon had just got bombed as well. So we didn't know how many more. We didn't know if it was Canada as well or all over the states. And
So yes, no,
sí.
yeah.
you will be
No, it's already recording.
Okay, that's time.
So, what does it mean to you to be a good citizen?
To participate actively in your community and just to be responsible in your actions towards other people.
Do you consider yourself a good citizen?
I try to be. Yes.
What actions do you take to be a good citizen?
I try and volunteer as much as I can, both here and in Canada. I try to be a good neighbor, try and drive responsibly, follow the laws.
And yeah, which are the most common mistakes that even good citizens make?
I think, well, a lot here in Mexico. Probably not driving as responsibly as we should. There are all those same laws in Mexico as there is in Canada about driving, but they're just not always felt. It's really black.
Oh, no.
Do you feel like if we all are informed about what is being a good citizen and everything, we would have a better world without like crime and problems?
I think if people could understand how their actions affect others and how other people's actions affect them and really understand that, then yes, I think it would be a much better world.
And yes, and when you were back in Canada, okay, how did you feel a good citizen?
Yes, but I also lived in a very different type of place. I lived in a really small town where you kind of had to be accountable for your actions because everybody knew who you were and you knew who everybody else was. And so a lot of that, it helps people. I think it helps people to be better citizens, which is why a lot of times they say small towns are nice to live in. But basically it's because you are accountable to everyone around you. They all know you.
And how did you feel about the citizens in the U.S. that suffered the 9/11 accident?
Well, I think it was absolute tragedy. I have friends that were living in New York at the time and working very close to the office building and lost people that they loved and cared about. So I think everybody, felt that. Sorry about laughing. I think everybody felt that equally, and I think it was something that affected everyone in the world.
And how did that affect your daily life?
I think it made me be more thoughtful, at least temporarily, about how much time I had left with the important people in my life, and just never knowing, like they might just go to work one day and not come home.
Did that change your perspective of life and citizenship and everything?
I think it did, but I think as humans we start to continue our daily routine and you kind of forget about that, and every once in a while you get reminders, and you have to kind of remind yourself about those events so that you always remember those lessons.
And
were your friends okay?
My friends were okay, but their friends and family were not.
And were you did that make just an impact in you or your family, the people that surrounded you?
I think everybody I know was impacted. I mean, I went to go teach. They were in grade 3, the students in elementary school that day, and even they were very impacted by that. I mean, they were asking when I go home, is my mom and dad going to be there? Is it going to be our city bombed? it was a lesson that stayed with everybody.
So you did want to work that day?
Yeah, nothing was canceled. Later, they landed all the planes from the United States. They landed them all in the Canadian airports, and then there were lots of people kind of just stranded. They didn't have anywhere to go because they were just, on their daily commutes on the airplanes, and all of a sudden they're in Canada. So they set up emergency shelters and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Sorry,
It's
I
really-
laughed really inappropriately in certain parts. But it was like first the little kids walk by, and then you guys were talking.
Good morning. What does it mean to you to be a good citizen?
To be a good citizen to me means that you are involved with the community, both like your immediate community that you're locally dealing with, but also just national community, global community, understanding that just because something's happening in Africa, it does mean that it can impact you, and not just completely disregarding it. So being informed, knowing what you're doing, a lot of what we cover in class, but just being informed and participating in anything that you can.
Do you consider yourself a good citizen? What actions do you take to be a good citizen?
Well, so specifically while I'm in school, while I'm teaching, which is my job, I try to be a role model to some extent to my students. I do acknowledge that I am involved with their lives, whether they like it or not. But you should always kind of model a good behavior. Be also just like simple things. If I see a kid lost in the library, this happened last week, she starts crying. Hi, child. How can I help? Just simple things and just being aware of the people around you. I try to do that. And then I also vote whenever possible. But informed voting, you don't just go out and vote.
What are some mistakes you think even good citizens do? Like the most common mistakes?
Just and it's the easiest thing to do. You just kind of get wrapped up in your own life a little bit. You stop paying attention to what's going on around you. You stop listening to what's happening in the news. You see a problem and you're just kind of like, I can take care of that themselves because I need to go get my coffee. You should be aware of others instead of focusing on yourself. And it's human nature. It's going to happen. Sometimes you get busy. You just don't care anymore. You go through cycles with it. Think about class here.
Okay, it's
good.
good. Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Thank you.
How many questions?
You're supposed to be 10.
What? How many?
Yeah, but
Do you feel like you were a good citizen back in your country?
Back in the US.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, looks like I did a thing. Yes. My job prior to this, part of it was organizing community volunteer events. And then when I no longer had that job, I still volunteered actively. And actually, when I go back, I'm very excited for this. I am taking part in a blood drive to help fundraise money for the Roswell Institute of Cancer Research. So it's one of the larger cancer research institutes in the United States, but it all goes towards local research in Buffalo. So just by doing like small events like that, I would like to say yes.
And did you consider your community to be like a good community? They are good citizens? Good citizens?
That's a trick question. My community as a whole is known for being very community oriented. We're very good at fundraisers and being involved and helping one another. But I'm also from an area that is rather crime stricken and poor, and so you see a lot of that. So it's interesting because you see half the community that's not even on their radar, they're just kind of going through daily life. Whereas you have the other half of the community that is their life to be involved and to participate. it's interesting. Overall, I would say yes, but there are large percentages of the population.
And do you consider yourself a good citizen in Mexico?
I'm far less involved in the community in Mexico, but that is largely just due to language barriers. But even then, like just participating in community events like Photo Fest with National Geographic the other weekend, I did check that out. But even then, I have a much different role. So here, like I am teaching full time. I do have a role. I am making my students, learn, like participate, be aware of local events. Whereas back home, it looks different.
And do you consider Mexicans good citizens?
Much nicer.
They are much nicer?
Yes!
Oh!
As a Mexican culture, as a community here in the city, much nicer. You say hi a lot. You care more about like someone's feelings. Like yes, I would say yes. They are good people here.
So do you feel comfortable here, or like, are you planning to go back because you don't like it, or because situations that...
I am going back for financial reasons. But I do genuinely like my time in Mexico. I am going to speak very positively about it when I do go home. We do not have a large Hispanic population where I live, so I think just having positive things to say is helpful. Mostly just because the only time the Hispanic population pops up in the news, it has to deal mostly with like illegal immigrants or Colombia. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. But I think just like speaking positively is helpful, and I am doing that when I go home.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sí, ya acabamos, ¿no? Y siento que nos falta una pregunta de las generales. Oh,
Yo...
¿Dejó de grabar?
No, sigue grabando. Nati, ¿cuál es tu contraseña? Isa. Sí, mi amor, por
Nos
favor,
falta una pregunta de las generales.
Es que no es que cinta, sí nos falta.
¿Pero cuál? Ajá, ¿cuál? So, do you consider that do you think that if we, like, as a world population, would act like better citizens, like many problems and crimes and bad stuff that is happening right now would be avoided?
That's a good question. I think that if everyone did have a conscience of citizenship, of they are not the only people in existence in their world, like there is a larger world which does affect everyone, a lot of that will go down. But I do think there are larger things that we tackle. So before you can start being philosophical, being all educated, all that jazz, you have to have your basic needs met. Okay, so constant food, water, shelter, safety, not being concerned with a guerrilla warrior going out and macheting your family to death after they rape you. You know, you need to have more practical solutions resolved, practical problem resolved before you can have any of that type of global unity guidance towards citizenship.
So even though people don't have that, do you think they should be informed or no?
You can. I mean, you can, but I can talk to a kid about how good it is to be a citizen and how you should care about other people all day I want, but if he is going home hungry every day, he doesn't really care. He doesn't, you know, you need to have your needs met first.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, that was the last one.